Many Sunday services open with a vocal defense of the sanctity of life. In the same hour, the leadership often encourages a financial standard for the family that requires both parents to enter the corporate workforce full-time to sustain it. In Greek, this is dilogos, literally being double-tongued. It describes a leader who maintains two conflicting positions: a public commitment to moral preservation and a private validation of the economic drivers that erode it. In this framework, the standard of living operates as the primary metric for a blessed life. Divine providence is treated as a concept for the past, while modern survival is taught as a matter of dual-income corporate participation. When the instructions of the apostles regarding the home are categorized as optional cultural artifacts, the leadership enters a state of adakomos, or disqualification. The authority of the text is structurally weakened to accommodate the financial requirements of the congregation. This shift creates a vacuum where the needs of the household are defined by the market rather than the word. It suggests that the Creator's design for the family is insufficient to meet the demands of the modern economy. A shepherd cannot authentically defend the unborn while actively endorsing an economic model that treats a new child as a threat to the family's net present value. This theology relies on visible markers to prove divine favor. The car in the driveway and the square footage of the home become the primary evidence used to validate a person's standing before God. As seen in this photograph, the theatrical nature of modern ministry often centers on this specific aesthetic of success. It creates a psychological link between the pulpit's approval and the acquisition of wealth. This authoritative presentation reframes the pursuit of high-status assets as a spiritual victory. It suggests financial accumulation is the intended outcome of faith. Across many denominations, corporate achievement is presented as a spiritual mandate. The accumulation of luxury assets is treated as a sign of covenantal health. This specific luxury vehicle serves as the benchmark for this metric. To maintain such an asset, a family must bind itself to a massive debt load, which necessitates a continuous, high-volume flow of corporate capital. This relentless pursuit stands at odds with the manna principle, the apostolic instruction to be content with food and raiment. That principle assumes a lifestyle of daily reliance, freeing the family to prioritize the home over the market. The promise of economic liberty without subjection to the Father's law is a functional trap. It leads the believer out of Egypt only to re-entangle them in a Babylonian system of dependency and debt. Understanding the dual income trap requires identifying the historical moment when the instructions for the family were severed from their structural foundation. This ancient scroll represents the foundational logic of the apostles. Their instructions for the household were built entirely upon the mandates established in the Torah and the prophets. The New Testament epistles were written to correct specific errors within that pre-existing framework. They were never intended to act as a separate, competing architecture for the home. The shift toward institutionalized theology, represented here by Constantine, introduced a Marcionite perspective, actively separating grace from physical adherence to the law. This separation allowed the historical church to label structural obedience as legalism. Once the biblical family order was viewed as an optional burden, it was discarded for cultural convenience. Removing this protective fence left the family unit without a jurisdictional boundary. In the absence of a biblical economic mandate, the family structure began to align with the requirements of the surrounding empire. Discarding the Torah baseline created a vacuum. In the following centuries, corporate economics moved into that empty space, becoming the new authority governing the daily life of the believer. This modern alignment follows the logic of ancient transactional theology, specifically the Canaanite and Phoenician worship of Molech. These circular stone foundations mark the sites of those ancient transactions. Practitioners offered their offspring to ensure agricultural prosperity and the success of the harvest. In this model, the child was an investment toward financial security. Today, that harvest has been replaced by the dual-income paycheck, which serves as the modern guarantor of stability. The altar didn't disappear, it simply changed form. The physical fire was replaced by a financial burn rate that demands both parents in the marketplace. The standard of living functions as the unchallengeable deity of the modern household. Its requirements for status and luxury are treated as non-negotiable mandates. When a family's security depends on a high overhead lifestyle, a child becomes a liability to that status. The abortion clinic and the outsourced state-run upbringing are the mandatory costs paid to keep the modern lifestyle afloat. The modern church provides the theological cover for this exchange. It condemns the physical sacrifice of the child, while validating the greed and materialism that make that sacrifice seem practical. This economic model results in a physical dismantling of the family unit, starting with the home itself. The apostles use the term oikorgos, keepers at home, designating it the primary center of labor and discipleship. To fund this sprawling infrastructure, parents are extracted, their energy redirected to corporate hierarchies. Children are then placed in state-run institutions, leaving the household entirely hollow. This hollow center makes the transfer of faith nearly impossible. When the parents are absent, the secular state becomes the primary influence, shaping the minds and morals of the next generation. The modern home functions as a high-cost shell for debt service. It is a specialized infrastructure occupied only during the off hours of a corporate career. The family is no longer a sovereign body. It is a collection of separate financial entities passing each other in the night to fund a 3,000-square-foot monument to their own labor. Breaking this cycle requires the Daniel standard. Faced with Babylon's economic requirements, the three Hebrews refused to bow, regardless of the physical cost. They utilized the even-if protocol. They acknowledged that God could deliver them from the furnace, but declared that even if he did not, they would not violate their covenant for the sake of survival. Applying this standard today involves a manna audit. Families must weigh their assets against their obedience. If the scale tips toward the house, it has become a god. Tearing down these modern high places requires liquidating the assets that demand a dual income. The modern furnace is the fear of a lowered social status. The system relies on the terror of losing the big house or the prestige career to keep the family bowed to the corporate altar. True obedience necessitates prioritizing the integrity of the home over the preservation of the American dream. It is a choice between a comfortable rebellion and a difficult faithfulness. The path back to a sovereign home is found in a strategic downsize. This is a mathematical retreat from the world's economy. By lowering the burn rate of capital, a family can reclaim the time and authority required to fulfill the apostolic instructions. These tools of labor highlight the original biblical baseline. Before the corporate era, the tent maker or cottage industry model kept economic production centered within the family unit. An integrated family business resolves the conflict between the paycheck and the commandment. When the family owns their labor, the requirement to work on the Sabbath or outsource children disappears. Liquidating luxury assets provides the freedom capital necessary to rebuild. It trades a high-status debt liability for the ability to operate as a self-sustaining unit. The resulting covenantal home is an anti-fragile microkingdom. It is a space where work and worship integrate, and children are discipled through daily observation. Reclaiming the home as a sovereign unit of discipleship is the final act of defiance against the altar of Mammon. It completes the exit from Babylon and the return to a faith that obeys.